We have all dealt with people who let us down, whether it is an unreliable coworker who consistently misses deadlines, a partner who seems emotionally distant, or a friend who repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute. Our natural human instinct is to confront them. We point out their flaws, we lecture them on their shortcomings, and we demand that they do better. We believe that by shining a harsh light on their failures, we will motivate them to change. But when you study the deepest mechanics of human psychology, you realize that direct criticism almost never inspires reform. Instead, it acts as a toxic accelerant that solidifies the very behavior you are trying to correct. Dale Carnegie observed that when you criticize or condemn someone, you aren't appealing to their logic. You are wounding their pride, hurting their sense of importance, and triggering their deepest defense mechanisms. The moment a person feels attacked, their brain enters a psychological survival mode. Okay? To protect their ego, they will instantly construct an elaborate fortress of rationalizations, excuses, and deflections. If you, if you tell an employee they are being sloppy, their mind will quietly convince them that you are being an unreasonable micromanager. If you tell a friend they are being selfish, they will convince themselves that you are being overly sensitive. Direct criticism forces the other person to double down on their bad behavior just to prove to themselves and to you that they are not the villain of their own story. Okay? When you attack someone's behavior directly, you force their ego to defend that behavior. You lock them into the very identity you want them to escape. To break this destructive cycle and inspire genuine change, you must master a highly sophisticated psychological technique, the identity anchor. This method completely bypasses the defensive walls of the human ego by exploiting a powerful universal cognitive drive known as the human mind desperately craves alignment between its internal self image and its external actions. We will go to extraordinary lengths to behave in a way that is consistent with who we believe we are. If you want someone to change their behavior, you do not attack their current actions. Instead, you strategically hand them a new, elevated identity. By anchoring their self image to a reputation of excellence, integrity, or reliability, you force their subconscious mind to align their daily behavior with that noble standard. You don't demand that they step up, you simply show them that they are already the kind of person who walks at a higher level. Direct criticism forces the other person to defend their flaws. The identity anchor bypasses their defense by handing them a reputation of excellence to live up to successfully deploy. You must understand the exact psychological blueprint of how human reputations are built and maintained. Dale Carnegie condensed this into one of his most powerful, timeless maxims give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Okay? When you assign a noble trait, a high standard, or an honorable identity to someone, you are doing far more than paying them a superficial compliment. You are installing a psychological mirror in their mind. Once they accept this high status identity, their brain begins to treat it as an active boundary. To act contrary to this new identity would trigger intense cognitive dissonance, a deeply uncomfortable mental state where a person's actions conflict with their self image. Imagine a manager trying to fix a talented but increasingly careless software developer whose code has been full of bugs lately. King, the critical approach, your last three pushes were incredibly sloppy. You're missing obvious edge cases, and it's slowing down the entire QA pipeline. You need to start paying attention. This triggers defensiveness, making the developer feel micromanaged and resentful. The identity anchor One of the things I've always respected about your work is your exceptional attention to detail. You've historically been the engineer on this team who catches the edge cases everyone else misses. And because of that track record, I want you to take the lead on reviewing this next critical phase. Inkele. Notice the surgical precision of the second approach. You have not ignored the issue, but instead of labeling the developer as sloppy, you anchored them to their identity as exceptionally detailed. Okay? By reminding them of who they truly are at their best, you make their recent sloppy mistakes look like an anomaly, a temporary slip up that is beneath their actual standard. The developer doesn't feel attacked, they feel seen, valued, and deeply motivated. They will now double check every single line of code, not because they fear your criticism, but because they desperately want to protect the highly prestigious reputation you just handed them. And by framing someone's mistakes as an anomaly to their true high status character, you motivate them to correct their own behavior, to protect their reputation, to make the identity anchor work seamlessly. You cannot simply throw out random, unearned compliments. If your praise feels fake or manipulative, the other person's psychological defenses will immediately go up. Flattery is a cheap counterfeit of genuine appreciation. It is shallow, selfish, and easily detected. For the identity anchor to take hold, the reputation you assign must be grounded in a believable reality. That you must master the three-step formula to deliver this anchor with absolute unshakable sincerity. Again, historical evidence, the elevated label, the future challenge. Step E, historical evidence. The foundation you must begin by pointing to a real, specific moment from their past where they exhibited the positive trait you want to reinforce. This roots your statement in objective truth, making it impossible for their ego to dismiss. For example, I was looking back at how you handled the sudden vendor crisis last quarter. No, dot step. The elevated label, the anchor next. You translate that specific past action into a permanent defining character trait. You are moving them from doing something good to being someone exceptional. For example, dot, and it reminded me that you are someone who stays incredibly cool under pressure. Again, step, send the future challenge, the pull. Finally, you present the current problem not as a failure, but as the perfect stage for them to display this high status identity once again. Okay, example, we have a highly volatile client onboarding next week, and because of your knack for keeping things steady, I want you to lead the initial kickoff meeting. By structuring your communication this way, you remove all trace of manipulation. You are simply acting as a mirror, reflecting their own best self back to them. The other person leaves the conversation feeling deeply understood and incredibly proud of who they are. They are now highly motivated to protect this elevated self image, and they will work tirelessly to ensure their future behavior perfectly matches the noble standard you have set for them. The identity anchor requires a specific formula, anchor a real past success to a permanent positive label, then invite them to live up to it. I know, when you consistently use the identity anchor, you aren't just correcting a single bad behavior, you are initiating a deep, long-term psychological shift. You are establishing what elite communicators call the silent contract of loyalty. In a world where most people are constantly criticizing, judging, or trying to tear others down to make themselves look better, someone who shines a light on another person's potential becomes incredibly rare. When you hand someone an elevated identity, you become the custodian of their self worth. You are the one person who truly sees them at their absolute best. And as a result, They will develop a fierce, unspoken loyalty to you and your leadership. People will work for a paycheck, but they will survive on a battlefield for someone who truly believes in their highest identity. Okay? This dynamic completely changes how people view your guidance. When you eventually do have to point out a mistake or suggest a course correction, it no longer feels like an attack from an adversary. Because you have already established that you see them as a high character, capable individual, your correction feels like a supportive friend helping them get back on track. Okay, instead of thinking, my boss is out to get me, their subconscious processes it as my boss knows I'm better than this and I need to prove them right. By shifting your approach from policing people's failures to highlighting their potential, you stop being a manager who demands obedience. You become a leader who inspires. You create an environment where people don't just do their jobs to avoid getting in trouble, they do their jobs to protect the highly prestigious version of themselves that you have helped them see. 'Cause when you become the custodian of someone's self worth, they will work tirelessly not just to hit a target, but to prove your belief in them was right. When you reach the ultimate peak of this psychological discipline, your entire approach to leadership, influence, and human relationships undergoes a beautiful evolution. You no longer walk into rooms trying to force people to see your value. You no longer waste your cognitive energy police checking every minor mistake, and you no longer feel the defensive urge to react to every disappointment with anger. Instead, you step into every interaction carrying a quiet, transformative power. You realize that the highest form of authority is not the ability to bend people to your will, but the capacity to inspire them to discover their own greatness. Okay, this is the true luminous soul of Dale Carnegie's philosophy. He didn't teach us to use the identity anchor to manipulate or trick people into doing what we want. He taught us that when you choose to look past dot someone's temporary flaws and speak directly to their highest potential, you are performing an act of profound emotional leadership. In a world that is constantly pointing out failures, criticizing shortcomings, and boxing people into their mistakes, your ability to see and call out their best self makes you an incredibly rare and magnetic force. Okay? The law of the mirror. What you choose to see in people is often what they will show you. If you treat them as untrustworthy, they will hide from you. But if you hold up a mirror, showing them their absolute best self, they will break through walls to ensure that image never cracks. By grounding your praise in real evidence, assigning noble labels, and inviting people to step up to future challenges, you do something far greater than correcting a single behavior. You build a culture of mutual respect, psychological safety, and deep, unshakable trust. The people in your orbit will stop viewing your feedback as a threat to their ego. Instead, they will seek out your guidance, treasure your opinion, and fiercely protect the high status reputation you have gifted them. Okay? As you carry this cinematic blueprint back into the high stakes realities of your career and personal life, remember the quiet rules of the game. Let the average managers scream, let the insecure minds criticize, and let the crowd try to force compliance through fear and control. While they are busy tearing people down, you will build them up. By mastering the art of the identity anchor, you gain the ultimate silent leverage and unshakable authority that shapes reality from the shadows, proving forever that the most powerful way to lead people is to help them become exactly who they always hoped they could be. Okay? By mastering the art of the identity anchor, you gain the ultimate silent leverage and unshakable authority that shapes reality by helping others become who they always hoped they could be. You know,